The tow truck's chains rattled against the rusted metal as security guards shoved Mason backward. His 7-year-old daughter screamed. Cameras flashed. 200 millionaires laughed at what they thought was junk. But underneath that corroded shell sat $3 million of American automotive history, and nobody knew, except the quiet man in work boots they were trying to humiliate. In 60 seconds, everything would change. The secret would explode. And the only person who'd shown him kindness, a broke waitress nobody noticed, would discover that sometimes the most valuable things come disguised as garbage. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The sun hadn't fully risen over the Illinois countryside when Mason Reed heard the floorboards creak outside his bedroom door. He didn't need to check the clock. It was 5:47 a.m., same as every morning for the past 3 years. "Daddy?" Chloe's voice came soft through the gap, tentative, always testing whether he was awake, never wanting to disturb him, but unable to sleep alone since her mother died. "Come here, sweetheart." The door pushed open. His daughter stood silhouetted against the hallway light, clutching that ratty stuffed rabbit she refused to let him replace. One ear hung by threads. The other had been stitched back on so many times it pointed the wrong direction. She padded across the hardwood in bare feet, climbed into bed beside him without asking. 7 years old and already learning to make herself smaller, quieter, less trouble. It broke something in him every time. "Bad dream?" Mason pulled the quilt over both of them. "Uh-huh." "Same one?" Chloe nodded against his shoulder. She never described the dreams anymore. Didn't need to. They both knew she was dreaming about the accident, about the night that split their lives into before and after. He held her until her breathing steadied, until the tension drained from her small body. Outside the window, the property stretched dark and empty, 40 acres of nothing between them and the nearest neighbor. Most people would call it isolated. Mason called it safe. By 6:30, they were downstairs. He made pancakes while Chloe sat at the kitchen counter drawing invisible patterns in the flour he'd spilled. The house was too big for 2 people. 8 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, a chef's kitchen they barely used. His father had built it during the boom years when Reed Investments was expanding faster than anyone could track. Now it just felt hollow. "We have to go into the city today," Mason said, flipping a pancake. "There's an event. Classic cars." Chloe's face brightened. "Can we bring ours?" "That's the plan." "Even though it's ugly?" He smiled. "Especially because it's ugly." She didn't understand yet. Nobody did. That rusted heap sitting under a tarp behind the barn looked like something that should have been crushed for scrap metal 20 years ago. Paint peeled in strips. Chrome had oxidized to a dull brown. The interior was destroyed. Cracked leather, missing gauges, seats torn down to the springs. But Mason had recognized the chassis number the moment he'd seen it half buried in weeds at that farm estate auction. He'd paid $120 while other bidders laughed. Let them laugh. They didn't know what they were looking at. Underneath the rust and decay sat one of only 348 original 1965 Shelby Cobra, 427 ES ever built. With proper restoration, it was worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. Maybe $3 million. Maybe more if the right collector got desperate. He hadn't told anyone. Not his board of directors, not his financial advisors, not even his father. Especially not his father. The old man would have wanted to flip it immediately, turn it into another line item on a quarterly earnings report. But Mason didn't want to sell it. He wanted to restore it. Slowly. Carefully. Bring it back the right way, the way his grandfather had taught him before dementia took his memories. Back when they'd spent weekends in the garage together, the old man's hands still steady enough to teach a boy how to rebuild an engine from parts. Those were good memories. Mason didn't have many left. "Go get dressed," he told Chloe. "Something nice. It's a fancy event." She slid off the stool, started toward the stairs, then stopped. "Will there be other kids?" "Probably not." "Oh." He knew that particular flavor of disappointment. Chloe spent too much time alone, too isolated out here. Other children made her nervous now. She'd missed too much school after the accident, fallen behind socially in ways that didn't show on report cards. But the alternative was worse. In the city, people recognized him. Recognized the Reed name. They had opinions about his money, his choices, his dead wife. They wanted things from him. Access. Investments. Introductions. Out here, nobody wanted anything. By 8 o'clock, they were loading the Cobra onto a flatbed trailer Mason kept for hauling equipment. He'd covered the car with a weathered canvas tarp that had seen better years, deliberately ugly. He wanted it to look like something a farmer might use to protect a broken tractor. Chloe helped him secure the tie-downs, her small hands serious with concentration as she checked each buckle twice. She was good at details. Careful. Too careful for a 7-year-old. Daddy, why don't you buy a nice car to show people instead? What's wrong with this one? It's all rusty and broken. Things that look broken can still be valuable, Mason said. Sometimes they're more valuable than the shiny stuff. She considered this with the gravity children bring to philosophical questions. Like Mr. Turnip? He glanced at the stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. Exactly like Mr. Turnip. The drive into Chicago took 90 minutes. Mason kept the truck at exactly the speed limit, staying in the right lane while faster traffic blew past. Chloe sat beside him reading a book about horses, occasionally pointing out things through the window. A red barn, a bunch of cows, a billboard advertising injury lawyers. As they got closer to the city, the landscape changed. Fields gave way to suburbs, suburbs to industrial parks to the dense urban sprawl that surrounded downtown. The event was being held at some converted warehouse space in the West Loop, one of those trendy areas where old meatpacking buildings got turned into event venues for people with too much money and not enough taste. Mason hated these things, but his assistant had insisted the charity was legitimate. They actually funded automotive trade schools for at-risk kids instead of just throwing galas and skimming the donations. And the organizers had personally invited him after someone on their board realized he'd made a substantial anonymous donation last year. So here he was, driving a rusted car to a luxury event where everyone would assume he was lost. The parking area was chaos when they arrived. Ferraris, Lamborghinis, a McLaren that probably cost more than most houses. Everything gleaming and perfect, arranged like jewelry on display while professional photographers worked the crowd. Mason backed his trailer into an empty spot near the loading entrance, deliberately away from the main showcase area. A woman in a headset immediately rushed over, clipboard in hand, stress radiating from her like heat shimmer. Sir, this is for registered vehicles only. If you're making a delivery, I'm registered, Mason Reed. She checked her list, frowned. Mr. Reed is supposed to arrive at the VIP entrance with... She looked up, actually saw him for the first time. Work boots, jeans, a flannel shirt that had been through the wash too many times. You're Mason Reed? That's right. Her expression shifted through several emotions too quickly to name. Confusion, doubt, growing horror as she realized she'd just been rude to someone important. I apologize, Mr. Reed. I didn't recognize. We were expecting... It's fine. Where do you want the car? Car? She stared at the trailer, at the lumpy shape under the tarp. That's your entry? Is there a problem? No, of course not. We have a specific area for the classic vehicles, and She was floundering now, trying to figure out how to handle something that clearly didn't fit the script. Let me get the event manager. She fled before Mason could respond. Chloe tugged his sleeve. Is something wrong? People get confused when things don't match their expectations, he said. It's not your fault or mine, just how people are. The event manager who appeared 5 minutes later was everything the first woman wasn't. Polished, confident, moving with the particular arrogance of someone who'd never been told no. Designer suit, expensive watch, hair that had seen a professional that morning. His name tag read Richard Castellano, event director. Mr. Reed. Richard's smile was practiced but didn't reach his eyes. We're so pleased you could join us. Though I have to admit there seems to be some confusion about your vehicle entry. No confusion. That's it. Mason nodded toward the trailer. Richard looked, really looked. His smile fractured. You're joking. Not joking. Mr. Reed, this is a prestigious showcase. We have 28 vehicles here collectively worth over $40 million. The photography alone cost us $18,000. We can't... He stopped, recalculated his approach. Perhaps you have another vehicle? Something more suitable for the caliber of event where this is what I brought. Richard's jaw tightened. Around them, other event staff had started to notice the commotion. A small crowd was forming. wealthy attendees in expensive casual wear, sipping champagne at 10 in the morning, sensing drama. Sir, I don't think you understand what kind of event this is. We have standards. We have a reputation that... Richard gestured at the tarp like it was roadkill. That looks like something you pulled out of a junkyard. I pulled it out of a barn, actually. Even worse. Richard had abandoned pretense now, his voice rising. We can't have that thing anywhere near the showcase vehicles. It'll look like a joke, like we're running some kind of low-rent county fair. Chloe pressed closer to Mason's side. He felt her trembling slightly. The registration said all classic American vehicles were welcome, Mason said quietly. This is a classic American vehicle. That is scrap metal. It's a 1965 Shelby Cobra. Richard laughed. A sharp, dismissive sound. That is not a Shelby Cobra. I've seen Cobras, real ones. That is a rusted-out kit car some amateur threw together in his garage and abandoned when he realized he was in over his head. Look at the chassis number. I'm not wasting time, so look at the number. Something in Mason's tone made Richard pause, but before he could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. Is there a problem here? Mason turned. A woman stood a few feet away, late 20s, maybe 30, wearing the black pants and white shirt of event staff. She held a tray of empty champagne glasses balanced on one hand, but her attention was entirely on Richard. This doesn't concern you, Clara, what Richard said without looking at her. I just thought, if there's a dispute about a vehicle, shouldn't we at least look at it before? I said it doesn't concern you. Get back to your station. The woman, Clara, hesitated. Her eyes moved from Richard to Mason to Chloe, who was now gripping Mr. Turnip so tightly the stuffed rabbit's remaining ear was folding in half. Sir, Clara addressed Mason directly, ignoring Richard's glare. Do you have your registration paperwork? Mason pulled it from his pocket. Clara set down her tray, took the papers, scanned them quickly. Her eyebrows rose. This says Classic American Muscle Car, Restoration Project. That's an accepted category. It's junk, Richard snapped. And you're about 2 seconds from being fired for insubordination. Clara's face went pale, but she didn't back down. I'm just reading what the registration... Get back to work. She handed the papers back to Mason, gave Chloe a small, encouraging smile, and retreated with her tray. But Mason saw her glance back twice as she walked away. Richard turned his full attention back to the problem at hand. Mr. Reed, I'm going to be very clear. That vehicle cannot be part of this showcase. I don't care what your registration says. I don't care if you think it's a Shelby Cobra or a vintage Rolls-Royce. It looks like garbage, and it will make this entire event look like a joke. So what do you suggest? Take it home. We'll refund your entry fee. And the charity donation I made? Richard's expression flickered. That's extremely generous, and we appreciate $500,000, Mason said. Unrestricted grant to your automotive trade school program. Already processed. Non-refundable. The crowd had grown larger. People were recording on their phones now. Mason could see the calculation happening behind Richard's eyes. The money versus the optics. The donation versus his pride. That doesn't change the fact that your vehicle doesn't meet our standards, Richard said finally. The donation was given freely. The showcase requires quality. So you're refusing to display my car. I'm protecting the integrity of this event by discriminating based on appearance. By maintaining standards. Richard was losing his composure now, voice rising to carry across the parking area. This is a luxury automotive showcase, not a scrapyard. If we let every piece of junk through the door just because someone paid money, we'd have no credibility left. Chloe made a small sound. Not quite a whimper, but close. Mason felt something cold settle in his chest. He'd dealt with men like Richard his entire life. Men who judged value by surface shine, who measured worth in polish and presentation. Men who looked at his daughter and saw only inconvenience, at his car and saw only rust, at him and saw only someone who didn't fit their expectations. Chloe, wait in the truck, he said quietly. But Daddy, please. She went, but slowly, looking back over her shoulder. Mason turned to Richard. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was not having security remove that thing the moment you arrived. But I can fix that now. Richard pulled out his phone, made a call. Yeah, we need a tow truck at the west loading area immediately. You're not towing my car. Watch me. The crowd was loving this. Mason could hear them murmuring, laughing, narrating the scene to people who hadn't arrived yet. Someone was live streaming it. He could see the phone held up, the distinctive red recording light. Perfect. Mr. Castellano, Mason said, keeping his voice level, I'm going to give you one more chance to reconsider. And I'm going to give you one chance to leave quietly before security escorts you off the property. That vehicle is worth more than every car in your showcase combined. Richard actually laughed out loud. That wreck? You're delusional. That thing's worth maybe $500 in scrap metal if you're lucky. $3 million, Mason said clearly for the cameras. Conservative estimate, after restoration. The laughter stopped, but Richard recovered quickly, his expression hardening into contempt. You're either lying or insane. Either way, you need to leave. A tow truck was already pulling into the parking area. Richard must have had it on standby, probably kept one around for exactly this kind of situation. The driver climbed out, started unwinding the cable. Mason didn't move from in front of the trailer. Sir, you need to step aside, the tow driver said. He sounded apologetic but firm. I'm not letting you take my car. Then we have a problem. Richard pushed forward. He's trespassing. Remove the vehicle and call the police if he interferes. The tow driver looked uncomfortable. I just tow cars, man. I don't want to be part of... You're being paid to do a job. Do it. Mason felt his phone buzz in his pocket. Probably his assistant, seeing the live stream, panicking. He ignored it. The tow driver hooked the cable to the trailer's tow point, started the winch. The trailer began to move. And that's when Chloe's voice carried across the parking lot, high and desperate and breaking. Please don't break my daddy's car. Everyone froze. She'd climbed out of the truck, was running toward them with Mr. Turnip clutched to her chest, tears streaming down her face. 7 years old and terrified and trying so hard to be brave. Please, she said again, looking up at Richard with those enormous eyes. Please don't take it. It's special. Daddy says it's special, even though it looks broken. The crowd had gone dead silent. Every camera was pointed at Chloe now. At this small child pleading with a grown man in a $1,000 suit, Richard's face had gone red. He was trapped, looking like a monster if he continued, looking weak if he backed down. His mouth opened, closed. Clara appeared out of nowhere, moving quickly across the parking area. She put herself between Chloe and the tow truck, one hand reaching down to rest gently on the child's shoulder. Hey, sweetie, she said softly. It's okay. Nobody's going to break anything. Yes, they are, Chloe's voice cracked. They're going to take Daddy's car and break it, and he'll be sad. I won't let them, Clara said. She looked up at the tow driver, then at Richard. You should stop, right now, before this gets any worse. You're fired, Richard said flatly. Then I'm fired. Stop the truck. The tow driver had already killed the winch. He was staring at Chloe with the expression of someone who just realized he was on the wrong side of history. Boss, I think maybe... You think what? That we should just let anyone bring whatever garbage they want because a kid is crying? This is a business. This is a child, Clara's voice rose, surprising even herself. And you're humiliating her father in front of 200 people over a car you haven't even looked at. I've seen enough. Have you checked the VIN? Have you had anyone who actually knows classic cars examine it, or are you just judging based on how it looks? Richard's jaw worked. It is junk. Then prove it, Clara said. You've got photographers here, media, collectors. Someone must know enough to verify what kind of car this actually is. If it's really just scrap, then fine. But if you're wrong, if there's even a chance you're wrong, you're making this entire event look ridiculous. For the first time, doubt flickered across Richard's face. The crowd was changing too. The laughter had died. Now people were whispering, looking uncomfortable. A few had lowered their phones. The optics were shifting fast. Rich event manager versus crying child. Arrogant city professional versus humble father. Richard clearly felt it too. Fine, he said through clenched teeth. Someone find me an expert who can verify this vehicle isn't worth my time. Already here. The voice came from the back of the crowd. People turned, parted. A man in his 60s pushed through, gray beard, leather jacket, moving with the particular confidence of someone who knew his business. Mason recognized him immediately. Dr. James Whitmore, automotive historian, had written 3 books on American muscle cars, consulted for the Smithsonian. Perfect. Jim, Richard said, relief flooding his voice. Thank goodness. Can you please explain to this gentleman that is that what I think it is? Dr. Whitmore was already moving toward the trailer, ignoring Richard entirely. It's a fake Cobra kit car, Richard said. Obviously. Don't be an idiot, Richard. Dr. Whitmore reached the trailer, pulled back the tarp. His hands moved carefully, reverently, tracing the lines of the rusted body. My God, how long has this been sitting? Found it in a barn, Mason said quietly. Estate auction. The chassis number? Mason told him. Dr. Whitmore went very still. Then he pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, probably his database. His face went pale. This is CSX 3012, he said slowly, clearly for everyone to hear. Built April 1965, factory 427 side oiler. One of only 348 original 427 Cobras ever produced. Delivered to a dealer in Milwaukee. Disappeared from records in 1971. He looked up at Mason. Where the hell did you find this? Northern Wisconsin. Old farmer who bought it cheap in '72, drove it for 2 summers, then parked it when the engine blew. It's been in his barn for 53 years. Jesus Christ, Dr. Whitmore straightened, turned to face Richard and the crowd. Do you people understand what you're looking at? This isn't just a Cobra. This is automotive history. This is one of the holy grails of American muscle car collecting. It's covered in rust, someone in the crowd said weakly. It's survivable rust. Surface corrosion. The chassis is solid. Look at the welds, the original stampings. With proper restoration, this car is worth... He paused, calculating. $3 million, bare minimum. Maybe 4 if you find the right buyer. Maybe more. The silence was absolute. Richard had gone gray. Someone in the crowd was laughing nervously. The live stream viewers were probably losing their minds. Dr. Whitmore wasn't finished. And you were going to tow it with a hook and cable? Do you have any idea what kind of damage that could have caused to the undercarriage? To the original suspension? You could have destroyed hundreds of thousands of dollars of value. He turned to Mason. Who's handling the restoration? Haven't decided yet. Use Henderson in California. Tell him Jim sent you. He'll do it right. Dr. Whitmore pulled out a business card, handed it over. And please, for the love of everything holy, get this car out of here before these idiots hurt it. Mason took the card. Appreciate it. Can I get pictures for my database? Of course. While Dr. Whitmore documented the Cobra from every angle, taking detailed photos of the chassis number, the engine bay, the original interior, the crowd slowly began to disperse. The show was over. The drama had peaked, but the damage was done. Mason could already see it spreading, people on their phones sharing the footage, tagging the event, tagging the charity. The story was writing itself. Arrogant event manager tries to tow priceless classic car. Little girl cries. Brave waitress intervenes, secret revealed. It would be everywhere by tomorrow. Richard had vanished. Probably in his office, trying to figure out how to spin this. Good luck with that. Clara still stood nearby, watching Dr. Whitmore work. Chloe had stopped crying, but hadn't let go of Clara's hand. When the historian finally finished and walked away, Mason approached Clara directly for the first time. Thank you, he said simply. She shook her head. I didn't do anything. You stood up when nobody else would. That's not nothing. Clara looked down at Chloe, managed a small smile. I just didn't want her to be scared. You probably lost your job. Probably. She didn't sound upset exactly, more resigned. It's okay. It was temporary anyway. I've lost worse jobs for worse reasons. Mason studied her for a moment, really looked at her. She had the particular exhaustion that came from working too many hours for not enough money, the careful posture of someone used to making themselves invisible. But she'd stepped forward anyway, put herself at risk for strangers. That was rare. What's your name? He asked. Clara Bennett. Mason Reed. He held out his hand. She shook it, her grip firm despite the nervousness in her eyes. You hungry, Clara? She blinked. What? We're going to get breakfast. You should join us. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because She stopped, glanced at the expensive cars still arranged around the lot, at the wealthy people in their expensive casual wear. I don't fit in here. Neither do I, Mason said. That's kind of the point. Chloe tugged Clara's hand. Please come. Daddy makes really good pancakes at home, but restaurant pancakes are better, and he won't admit it. Traitor, Mason muttered. Clara laughed, a surprised, genuine sound. I really shouldn't. You're fired anyway, Mason pointed out. Might as well get a meal out of it. She hesitated, clearly torn. Mason could see the calculation happening, the awareness of social distance, of inappropriate boundaries, of all the unspoken rules about who ate breakfast with billionaires and who didn't. He waited. Didn't push. Let her make the choice herself. Okay, Clara said finally, but somewhere normal, not anywhere fancy. Deal. They ended up at a diner called Pete's, 20 minutes from the event venue, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting since dawn, and waitresses who called everyone hun. Perfect. Chloe ordered chocolate chip pancakes. Clara got scrambled eggs and toast. Mason asked for black coffee and hash browns. You're really a billionaire? Clara asked after the waitress left. She said it quietly, like she was afraid someone would overhear. Technically, most of it's tied up in investments and property. It's not like I have a vault of gold coins. But you could buy anything you wanted. Most things, yeah. Why do you live in the middle of nowhere? Mason glanced at Chloe, who was coloring on the paper placemat with crayons the restaurant kept in a cup. Privacy, safety, peace. You don't like the city? The city's fine. The people who come with money aren't. Clara absorbed this. Is that why you hid the car? Because people would judge you differently if they knew what it was? Partly. Mostly I just wanted to see if anyone would look past the rust. That's kind of a test, isn't it? Maybe. Did I pass? Mason smiled. You're the only one who did. The food arrived. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, Chloe making a serious dent in her pancakes while Clara picked at her eggs. Can I ask you something? Clara said eventually. Sure. Why did you really come to that event? You clearly didn't care about showing off. You knew they'd react badly to the car, so why bring it? Mason considered the question. The charity is legitimate. They're actually helping kids learn useful skills instead of just throwing parties and skimming donations. I wanted to support that. And I thought, he paused, I thought maybe seeing something real, something with history and value underneath the surface damage, might remind people that worth isn't always obvious. That's pretty optimistic for a guy who lives alone in the woods. I have my moments. Clara smiled, but it faded quickly. They're going to crucify that event manager online. The video's probably everywhere already. He made his choice. You don't feel bad? He tried to humiliate a single father in front of his daughter because a car didn't look expensive enough. He called a priceless piece of automotive history junk without bothering to check. He threatened to destroy something irreplaceable out of pure arrogance. Mason shrugged. No, I don't feel bad. Fair enough. Chloe looked up from her coloring. Clara, do you have kids? No, sweetie. Do you want kids? Chloe, Mason started. It's okay, Clara said. I don't know. Maybe someday, if things were different. What would need to be different? Clara's expression grew distant. Money, stability, a life that didn't feel like it was going to fall apart any second. My mommy died, Chloe announced with the casual brutality of children discussing tragedy. In a car accident 3 years ago. I'm so sorry, Clara said softly. Daddy cries sometimes when he thinks I'm asleep. I hear him. Mason felt his chest tighten. Chloe, it's okay, Daddy. It's true. She returned her attention to Clara. Are you sad too? Sometimes. About what? My mom's sick. We don't have money for the treatment she needs. I work a lot, but it's never enough. Clara's voice had gone quiet. Sorry, you didn't ask for my life story. I did, though, Chloe said. I asked if you were sad. Clara laughed, but it sounded wet. You did. You're right. They finished breakfast. Mason paid the bill, left a tip that would probably make the waitresses weak. Outside in the parking lot, Clara hesitated before getting into her beat-up Honda. Thank you for breakfast, she said. Thank you for standing up for Chloe.
Anyone would have. They didn't, though. That's the point. Everyone else walked away.
Clara looked down, uncomfortable with the praise.
I should go. I need to start looking for another job.
What kind of work do you do, besides catering events? Anything I can find, waitressing, mostly, some retail. I'm not really qualified for much else. Mason pulled out his wallet, extracted a business card. Call this number. Ask for Jennifer. Tell her I sent you. Clara took the card, read it.
Reed Investments? We're always looking for good people. Jennifer runs HR. She'll find something that fits. I don't have a college degree. Neither did my grandfather, and he started the company. Jennifer will work with you. Just call. Clara stared at the card like it might bite her. I can't accept charity. It's not charity. It's hiring someone who showed integrity when it mattered. That's rare. I'm not in the habit of letting rare things slip away.
She looked up at him, searching his face for something. Insincerity, maybe, or ulterior motives. Whatever she was looking for, she didn't seem to find it. Okay, she said finally. I'll call. Good. Chloe hugged Clara's legs suddenly, fiercely. Come visit us sometime. Daddy doesn't have friends, and it makes him sad. I have friends, Mason protested weakly. Name one. He couldn't. Clara was trying not to laugh. I'll visit, Clara promised. If your dad says it's okay. It's okay, Mason said. They drove home in the late afternoon light, the Cobra still secure on its trailer, Dr. Whitmore's card in Mason's pocket, Clara's phone number in his contacts. Chloe fell asleep somewhere past the suburbs, her head against the window, Mr. Turnip clutched tight. Mason drove and thought about the expression on Clara's face when she'd stepped between Chloe and the tow truck. The way she'd looked at his daughter, not with pity, but with recognition, like she understood what it felt like to be small and scared and at the mercy of people who didn't care. He thought about rust and value, and things that looked broken but weren't. By the time they pulled into the driveway, the sun was setting behind the barn, painting everything gold and amber. Mason carried Chloe inside, put her to bed still in her clothes. She barely stirred. Then he went back outside, stood in front of the Cobra while the last light faded from the sky. $3 million of history and craftsmanship hidden under a layer of oxidation and time. Dismissed as garbage by people who looked at surfaces instead of structures. He pulled the tarp back over it, secured the ties. Tomorrow he'd call Henderson in California, start the restoration process. It would take months, maybe a year. But he'd do it right. Bring it back the way it deserved. And maybe, if he was lucky, Clara would call Jennifer. Maybe something else could be restored too. Something that had been rusting for longer than any car. His phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. The video has 2 million views. Board wants a statement. Mason deleted the message, turned off his phone, and went inside to his empty house. In the kitchen, Chloe's drawings still covered the counter. Crayon sketches of horses and rainbows, and a stick figure family that included a mommy who wasn't there anymore. He cleaned them up carefully, saved them in the folder with all the others. Then he sat in the dark living room and thought about the future for the first time in 3 years. Clara stared at the business card for 3 days before she found the courage to dial the number. It sat on her kitchen counter next to the stack of overdue bills, electric, water, her mother's prescription copays. The card looked expensive, heavy stock paper, embossed lettering, the kind of thing people like her didn't usually hold unless they were cleaning someone's office. Reed Investments. A phone number. An address in downtown Chicago that she recognized from passing it on the bus. You should call, her mother said from the couch. Patricia Bennett was 53 but looked 70, her body wrecked by the kind of cancer that didn't care about health insurance or payment plans. She'd been on the couch for 2 months now, too weak to climb the stairs to her bedroom. I don't know, Mom. What's the worst that happens? They say no? They say yes, and then I mess it up. Clara filled a glass of water, brought it over with her mother's afternoon pills. I'm not qualified for whatever job they're offering. He wouldn't have given you the card if he didn't mean it. You don't know that. Rich people do weird things. Maybe he felt sorry for me. Patricia took her pills slowly, wincing. The girl you told me about, his daughter, she liked you. She's 7. 7-year-olds like everyone. You said she hugged you. Clara had said that. Had mentioned it maybe 5 times since breakfast at Pete's, actually, though she'd tried to sound casual about it. Something about that small body pressing against her legs, those thin arms wrapping tight, had lodged itself somewhere in her chest and wouldn't leave. "Just call," Patricia said. "What else are you going to do? Go back to Marco's and let him grab your ass every shift?"
He doesn't. Clara stopped. He did. Marco absolutely did, and they both knew it, and she'd been putting up with it because she needed the money, and jobs that paid under the table didn't come with HR departments. She picked up the card again, turned it over. Nothing written on the back, just the smooth, expensive cardstock. "Okay," she said. "I'll call." She called the next morning after her mother fell back asleep. A professional voice answered on the second ring. "Reed Investments. How may I direct your call?" Claire's throat went dry. Hi. I'm looking for Jennifer, in HR. May I ask who's calling?" "Clara Bennett. Mason Reed told me to. Mr. Reed suggested I—" "One moment, please." Classical music filled the line. Clara counted her heartbeats. Got to 47 before someone picked up. "This is Jennifer Okoro." The voice was warm, efficient. "You're Clara?" "Yes, Mr. Reed said I should call about—" "I know exactly why you're calling. Mason messaged me Sunday night. Can you come in today?" "Today? Is that a problem?" Claire looked down at her clothes. Yoga pants with a hole in the knee, a t-shirt from a 5K she'd never actually run. "I'd need to change, and I'm not sure I have anything appropriate for— Business casual is fine. 2 o'clock work for you?" Yes, 2 o'clock. "Perfect. Ask for me at reception. We'll get you sorted." The line went dead before Clara could ask what sorted meant. She spent the next 3 hours trying on every piece of clothing she owned, rejecting each one. Too casual, too worn, too obviously cheap. Finally, she settled on black pants that were only slightly faded and a blue blouse she'd bought for her mother's last hospital visit. The bus downtown took 40 minutes. Clara spent the entire ride alternating between nausea and a strange, buzzing hope that felt dangerous. Reed Investments occupied floors 18 through 22 of a glass tower that probably cost more than her entire neighborhood. The lobby had actual marble floors, real plants that someone clearly watered, security guards in suits. Clara felt like an imposter the moment she walked through the revolving door. The receptionist was young, polished, wearing jewelry that Clara suspected was real gold. She smiled when Clara approached, professional but not unkind. "I'm here to see Jennifer Okoro," Clara said. "I have a 2 o'clock. "Name?" "Clara Bennett." The receptionist typed something, nodded. "Take the elevator to 20. Someone will meet you." The elevator was the kind that moved so smoothly you barely felt it. Clara watched the numbers climb, tried to control her breathing. By the time the doors opened on 20, her palms were sweating. A woman waited in the hallway, late 30s, natural hair pulled back in an elegant twist, wearing a gray suit that probably cost more than Clara made in a month. She smiled when she saw Clara, and it reached her eyes. "Clara? I'm Jennifer. Come on back." She led Clara through an open office space where people worked at sleek desks with multiple monitors, everyone looking competent and purposeful and like they belonged there. Clara had never felt more out of place in her life. Jennifer's office was smaller than Clara expected, just a desk, 2 chairs, a window overlooking the city. She gestured for Clara to sit. "Water? Coffee?" "I'm okay, thank you." Jennifer settled into her chair, pulled up something on her computer. "So, Mason says you stood up for his daughter when everyone else walked away." Clara shifted uncomfortably. It didn't seem right, what they were doing. Most people would have kept their heads down, especially someone in your position." "My position?" "Temporary employee. No job security. Direct conflict with management." Jennifer's eyes were kind but sharp. "You risked your income to help strangers. That tells me something about your character." "It got me fired." "It got you here." Jennifer leaned forward. "Tell me about your work history." Clara walked through it. The jobs that never lasted, the shifts that barely covered rent, the constant scramble to keep her head above water while her mother got sicker. She tried to make it sound better than it was, but Jennifer kept asking questions that forced honesty. "Why didn't you finish college?" "My dad left. Mom got sick the first time. Someone had to work." "What were you studying?" "Business administration. I wanted to... Clara stopped, shook her head. It doesn't matter. I didn't finish. It matters to me. What did you want to do? Clara hadn't said it out loud in years. I wanted to help small businesses, the kind that don't have resources for consultants or proper accounting. I thought maybe I could... She felt stupid suddenly. It's dumb. Forget it. It's not dumb. Jennifer made a note. What are your computer skills like?
Basic office stuff. Excel, Word, I can learn. How are you with people? Fine, I guess. I've worked service jobs for 10 years. You get good at reading people or you don't last. Jennifer asked more questions about conflicts she'd handled, difficult customers, times she'd had to solve problems on the fly. Clara answered as honestly as she could, waiting for the moment when Jennifer would realize this was a mistake, that Clara didn't belong in a building like this. But that moment didn't come. Instead, Jennifer sat back, seemed to make a decision. I'm going to be straight with you. We have an opening in our community investment division. It's entry level, basically an administrative assistant with room to grow. You'd be supporting our team that works with small business grants and microloans. Clara's heart stuttered. That sounds like exactly what The pay is $45,000 to start. Health insurance, dental, vision, 4 weeks PTO. We also have an education assistance program if you want to finish your degree. The number hit Clara like a physical thing. $45,000. She currently made maybe 22 working 3 jobs. Health insurance meant her mother could see actual doctors instead of the urgent care clinic. PTO meant she could take her mom to chemo without losing shifts. I don't have a degree, Clara said weakly. I don't have experience in... You have 10 years of customer service, crisis management, and working under pressure. You stood up to a room full of wealthy assholes to protect a child. And Mason Reed, who doesn't trust easily, trusts you enough to send you here. Jennifer's smile was genuine. That's enough for me. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Start Monday. We'll handle the paperwork now. Clara's eyes were burning. She blinked hard, trying to keep it together. Yes, God, yes, thank you. Don't thank me. Do good work. That's all I ask. The paperwork took an hour. Direct deposit forms, tax documents, insurance selections that Clara read 3 times because she couldn't believe they were real. Jennifer walked her through everything patiently, never making her feel stupid for asking questions. When it was done, Jennifer handed her a folder with copies of everything. You'll start Monday at 8. Dress code is business casual. What you're wearing now is perfect. Your supervisor is Marcus Chen. He's good people. You'll like him. I still can't believe this is happening. Believe it. Jennifer stood, extended her hand. Clara shook it, still dazed. And Clara, Mason doesn't do favors. He invests in people he thinks are worth it. Don't prove him wrong. I won't. Clara floated through the rest of the day in a haze. She took the bus home, walked into the apartment, and just stood there for a moment looking at her mother on the couch. Well, Patricia asked, I got it. I start Monday. Her mother's face crumpled. Not sad, relieved. The kind of relief that comes after years of holding your breath. How much? Clara told her. Patricia started crying. Then Clara was crying too, both of them ugly crying on the couch like they'd just won the lottery. Because, in a way, they had. That weekend, Clara called the number Mason had written on the back of Dr. Whitmore's card. The one for Chloe, with a note that said, in case you want to visit sometime. He answered on the 3rd ring. Hello? Hi, it's Clara, Bennett from the I Know Who You Are. He sounded pleased. How'd it go with Jennifer? I start Monday. I don't know how to thank you. Do good work. Jennifer's excited about you. She said that? She did. There was a pause. Chloe's been asking about you, wants to know if you're coming to visit. Clara's chest did something complicated. I told her I would. You free tomorrow? We're grilling burgers. Nothing fancy. I wouldn't want to impose. Clara, you stood between my daughter and a tow truck. You can handle a backyard barbecue. She laughed despite herself. Okay, what time? Noon. I'll text you the address. Should I bring anything? Just yourself, and maybe low expectations for my cooking. Chloe's convinced I burn everything. I heard that. Chloe's voice came faintly through the phone. Clara was smiling when she hung up,
really smiling, for the first time in weeks. Sunday morning, she borrowed her mother's car, a 1998 Civic that burned oil and made concerning noises but still ran. The drive to Mason's property took just over an hour, the city giving way to suburbs giving way to actual countryside. The address led her down a long gravel drive bordered by old oaks. The house appeared through the trees, huge, beautiful, completely unexpected. Not ostentatious, just solid and well-built, the kind of place that had been there for generations. Clara suddenly felt underdressed in her jeans and t-shirt. But when she parked, Chloe came running out before she'd even opened the door, Mr. Turnip tucked under one arm. "You came! Daddy said you would, but I wasn't sure." "I promised, didn't I?" Chloe grabbed her hand, started pulling her toward the house. "Come see my room and the barn. And Daddy's trying to make potato salad, but it looks weird." "I can hear you," Mason called from somewhere inside. The house was beautiful inside, but lived in. Chloe's drawings covered the refrigerator, dishes in the sink, a pair of small sneakers kicked off by the door. It felt like a home, not a showroom. Mason appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He'd traded the work boots for bare feet, but otherwise looked the same. Jeans, t-shirt, comfortable in his own space. "Hey, you found us okay?" "GPS works even in the wilderness." "This isn't wilderness. Wilderness doesn't have internet." He gestured toward the back door. "Come on, I'll give you the tour before Chloe drags you into 47 different adventures." The property was incredible. 40 acres of woods and meadow, a pond, the barn that housed the Cobra, and what looked like several other project vehicles. Chloe ran ahead, pointing out her favorite trees and the place where she'd seen a deer last week. "This is amazing," Clara said. "How do you ever leave?" "I don't, mostly. That's the point." "Doesn't Chloe get lonely?" "Probably." Mason's expression darkened slightly. "I'm working on it. She's starting at a new school in the fall. Smaller class sizes, better program for kids who need extra support." "Extra support?" "Anxiety, PTSD. She's been seeing a therapist since the accident." He said it matter-of-factly, but Clara heard the weight underneath. "She's better than she was, but crowds still freak her out. Loud noises, unexpected changes." "The tow truck." "Yeah, the tow truck." Mason stopped walking, looked out over the pond. "I shouldn't have brought her to that event. I knew it would be chaotic. I just wanted her to see something beautiful, something worth caring about." "The car." "And people who still gave a damn about craftsmanship, history, things that last." He shook his head. Instead, she got to watch her dad get humiliated by an asshole in a suit. "You weren't humiliated. Richard was. Doesn't change how it felt in the moment." Clara didn't know what to say to that. They stood in silence for a while, watching Chloe throw sticks into the pond for an imaginary dog. "She needs more than just me," Mason said quietly. "She needs friends, normal experiences, a life that isn't just her traumatized dad hiding in the woods." "You're not hiding." "Aren't I?" Claire considered that. "Maybe a little, but you're also keeping her safe. That counts for something." "Does it? Or am I just making it worse?" Before Claire could answer, Chloe came running back. "Can we eat now? I'm starving, and Daddy's potato salad is probably getting worse the longer we wait." "It's not that bad," Mason protested. "It has raisins in it. That's a classic preparation." "It's weird, Daddy." Clara laughed. "I'll be the judge. Let's eat." The burgers were actually perfect. Medium rare, seasoned well, nothing burned. The potato salad was indeed strange, but not terrible. They ate at a picnic table under an old maple, while Chloe told increasingly elaborate stories about her stuffed animals. "Mr. Turnip used to be a spy," she explained seriously. "But he retired because his ear got ripped off, and he couldn't hear the secrets anymore." "That's a solid reason to retire," Clara agreed. "Now, he mostly just gives advice. He's very wise." "What kind of advice?" Chloe thought about it. "He says people are usually nicer than they seem. You just have to give them a chance." Mason and Clara's eyes met across the table. Mason's expression was complicated. After lunch, Chloe wanted to show Clara the Cobra. They walked to the barn together, Chloe chattering about restoration and chassis numbers and things she clearly didn't fully understand but repeated because her father had told her. The car sat under better lighting now, the tarp removed. It still looked rough, rust and decay and years of neglect. But Clara could see something else now, too. The lines underneath.
the shape of something that had once been beautiful.
Daddy's going to fix it, Chloe said. Make it shiny again. How long will that take? A year, maybe. Maybe more. Mason ran his hand along the edge of the doorframe. Can't rush good work. Why this car? Clara asked. Why not buy one that's already restored? Because nobody else wanted this one. Everyone saw junk, saw something not worth saving. He looked at her. I don't like leaving things behind just because they're damaged. Clara felt the words land somewhere deep. She turned away, pretended to examine a workbench covered in tools. Clara? Chloe's small voice. Are you okay? Yeah, sweetie, I'm good.
They spent the rest of the afternoon in comfortable ease, walking the property, sitting by the pond, talking about nothing important. Chloe showed Clara her room, which was exactly what you'd expect from a 7-year-old girl who'd been given unlimited art supplies and no supervision. Drawings covered the walls. A dollhouse sat half-constructed in the corner. Books everywhere. This is amazing, Clara said. Daddy lets me decorate however I want. He says it's my space. That's nice of him. He's sad a lot, though. Chloe said it casually while rearranging her stuffed animals. He doesn't think I know, but I do. Clara didn't know how to respond to that. He smiles more when you're here, Chloe continued. I like that. Chloe, do you have a dad? The question caught Clara off guard. He left when I was 12. I don't really remember him much. That's sad. Yeah, it was. Is your mom nice? Very nice. She's sick right now, but she's still the best person I know. Chloe considered this. Maybe she could come visit too sometime, if she's not too sick. Clara's throat tightened. Maybe. When the sun started setting, Clara knew she should leave, but found herself reluctant. Mason walked her to her car while Chloe stayed inside, already half asleep on the couch. Thank you for coming, he said. It meant a lot to her. I had a really good time. You sound surprised. I am, a little. I don't usually... Clara stopped. I don't usually fit in places like this. What places? Beautiful places. Peaceful places. Places where people have their lives together. Mason laughed, a short, bitter sound. You think I have my life together? More than me. Clara, I'm a widower, raising a traumatized kid in the middle of nowhere because I'm too scared to face the world. I haven't dated in 3 years. My father thinks I'm wasting my potential. My daughter talks to stuffed animals about complex emotional issues because I don't know how to help her process grief. I'm held together with duct tape and denial. Clara blinked. Oh, so yeah, you fit fine. They stood there in the driveway while the sky turned purple and gold, crickets starting their evening song. Can I come back? Clara asked. Sometime? I'd like that. Your dad, does he live nearby? Chicago. We don't talk much. Why not? Mason's jaw tightened. He thinks I'm hiding from responsibility. Thinks I should be running the company instead of letting the board handle it. Thinks raising Chloe in isolation is selfish. That's bullshit. Is it, though? Sometimes I think he's right. Sometimes I think I'm ruining her. You're not. Clara said it with absolute certainty. She's happy. She feels safe. That's more than a lot of kids get. She needs more than safe. She needs her dad. And you're here. You show up. That's everything. Mason looked at her for a long moment. How do you do that? Do what? Make things sound simpler than they are. They are simple. People just complicate them. He smiled, genuine this time. Come back next weekend. If you want. I want. Clara drove home as the last light faded, her mother's car rattling over the country roads, and felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. Not quite hope. Not quite happiness. Something in between that didn't have a name yet. When she got home, her mother was still awake, watching some crime show with the volume too loud. How was it? Patricia asked. Good. Really good. The little girl. Perfect. Smart. Funny. A little sad, but handling it. And him? Claire sat down on the couch, pulled the blanket over her mother's legs. Complicated, lonely, doing his best. You like him. Mom, you do. I can tell. It's not like that. We're just friends. Friends who invite you to their house for burgers. Friends who helped me get a job.
That's all. Patricia gave her a look that said she wasn't buying it. Be careful, honey. Of what? Getting attached to things you can't keep. The words hit harder than they should have. Clara pulled the blanket tighter, said nothing. But late that night, lying in bed, she thought about Mason's hands on the cobra's rusted frame, the way he looked at damaged things and saw value instead of junk. She thought about Chloe saying her father smiled more when Clara was around. She thought about the way Mason had looked at her in the driveway, like she was something worth keeping too. And for the first time in years, Clara let herself wonder what it would feel like to stay. Monday morning arrived with the kind of nervous energy that made Clara's hand shake while buttoning her blouse. She'd woken up at 5, unable to sleep, and spent 2 hours getting ready for a job she still couldn't quite believe was real. Her mother was already awake when Clara came downstairs, sitting at the kitchen table with her coffee. "You look professional," Patricia said. "I look terrified." That too, but mostly professional. Clara checked her reflection in the hallway mirror one more time. The blouse was wrinkled despite ironing it twice. Her shoes were scuffed, but it was the best she had, and it would have to be enough. "I'm going to mess this up," she said. "Probably. Everyone messes up their first week." Her mother smiled. "But you'll figure it out. You always do." The bus was crowded with commuters, everyone buried in their phones or staring vacantly at nothing. Clara stood near the back, gripping the pole, trying to breathe slowly. By the time she reached the Reed Investments building, her shirt was sticking to her back with sweat. The security guard recognized her from Friday, waved her through with a nod. The elevator ride to 20 felt both too fast and too slow. When the doors opened, a man in his early 40s was waiting. Asian, glasses, friendly smile. "Clara Bennett? That's me? Marcus Chen, I'm your supervisor. Welcome aboard." He shook her hand firmly, then led her through the office to a desk near the windows. It wasn't much. Standard corporate setup, computer, phone, a sad little succulent someone had left behind. But it was hers. "Jennifer probably told you we handle community investment," Marcus said, settling into the chair beside her desk. "Small business grants, microloans, financial literacy programs. Basically, we help people who can't get traditional financing." "Sounds good." "It is good. It's also a lot of paperwork and annoying bureaucracy." He grinned. "But someone's got to do it. Your main job is keeping me organized, managing applications, following up with applicants. Think you can handle that?" "I can try. That's all I ask." Marcus pulled up something on her computer. "Let's get you logged in. Fair warning, our database system is from like 2003 and it's temperamental as hell, but you'll figure it out." The first week was overwhelming. Clara spent 8 hours a day drowning in spreadsheets and application forms and phone calls with small business owners who were desperate, angry, or both. The database crashed twice. She accidentally deleted an entire folder of files on Wednesday and spent 3 hours recovering them while Marcus assured her everyone did that at least once. But she didn't get fired. Marcus was patient, walking her through processes multiple times without making her feel stupid. The other people in the office were friendly, stopping by to introduce themselves, inviting her to lunch, treating her like she belonged there. By Friday afternoon, Clara's brain felt like mush, but she'd made it through without any catastrophic failures. "You did good," Marcus said as she was packing up. "See you Monday." "Thanks. For everything. Thank me by not quitting. We go through assistants like tissues around here." "Why?" "Because the work is hard and the pay is just okay, and most people realize they can make more money doing literally anything else." Marcus shrugged. "But the ones who stay tend to stay for a long time. Something about actually helping people gets addictive." Clara thought about that on the bus ride home. The application she'd processed that week. A woman trying to start a catering business, a veteran opening an auto shop, a single father launching a cleaning service. Real people with real dreams who just needed someone to take a chance on them. She understood that. When she got home, her mother was on the couch, looking worse than usual, pale, sweating. "How bad?" Clara asked. "Had a rough day?" "It's fine." It wasn't fine. Clara could see that, but the clinic wouldn't see her mother without payment up front, and the new insurance didn't kick in for another 3 weeks. "I'll call them again tomorrow," Clara said. "Don't, I'll manage." "Mom, I said I'll manage. Tell me about work." So Clara did, sitting on the floor beside the couch, describing Marcus and the office
and the application from the woman who wanted to open a bakery in Englewood. Her mother listened, asked questions, smiled at the right parts, but Clara could see the pain in her eyes. That night, she lay awake calculating numbers. The insurance would help once it started, but there were still copays, deductibles, medications that weren't covered. Her salary was better than anything she'd made before, but it still wasn't enough. Nothing was ever enough. Saturday morning, her phone buzzed with a text from Mason. "You coming out today?" Chloe's been asking. Clara had almost forgotten. The week had been such a blur that the previous weekend felt like it had happened to someone else. "What time? Whenever. We're not doing anything important." She borrowed her mother's car again, stopped at a grocery store on the way to pick up cookies because showing up empty-handed felt wrong. The drive was easier this time, less nerve-wracking. She even enjoyed it. Windows down, radio playing something forgettable, the city giving way to open space. Chloe was waiting on the porch when Clara pulled up, already running toward the car before Clara had even turned off the engine. "You came back!" "I told you I would." Adults say lots of things they don't mean. Daddy says it's called being polite. "Well, I meant it." Chloe grabbed her hand, started pulling her toward the house. "Guess what? The restoration guy called and he's coming next week to look at the car, and Daddy let me help pick out the new seat covers, even though he says I have terrible taste." "Your taste is fine," Mason called from inside. "It's just very pink." "Pink is a good color." "For race cars?" "For everything." Clara laughed, following Chloe through the front door. The house smelled like coffee and something baking. Mason appeared from the kitchen, flour on his shirt. "You're early." "Is that okay?" "It's fine. I'm making cinnamon rolls. They'll be ready in 20 minutes. "You bake?" "Sometimes, when I'm stressed." "What are you stressed about?" Mason glanced at Chloe, who was already distracted by her coloring books. "My father called. He's coming for dinner tomorrow." "That sounds normal?" "You haven't met my father." They sat on the back porch while the cinnamon rolls baked, Chloe running around the yard with a kite that wouldn't fly because there wasn't enough wind. Mason explained his father in fragments. Philip Reed, founder of Reed Investments, semi-retired but still controlling, convinced Mason was wasting his life and potential. "He thinks I should be in the city," Mason said, "running board meetings, making deals, being visible." "What do you think?" "I think visibility is overrated. I think most of what passes for business is just ego and theater. I can do more good from here, making decisions that actually help people instead of just shareholders." "Does your dad understand that?" "My dad understands profit margins and market share. He doesn't understand why I choose to live like this when I could have anything." Clara watched Chloe trip over the kite string, get up laughing. "She seems happy here." "She is. That's what kills me. She's happy. She's healing. She's starting to trust the world again. But my father acts like I'm keeping her prisoner." "Are you worried he's right?" Mason was quiet for a long time. "Every single day." The cinnamon rolls were perfect. Sweet, warm, exactly what Clara needed after the week she'd had. They ate them at the kitchen counter while Chloe described an elaborate fantasy involving Mr. Turnip saving the president from aliens. "The president of what?" Mason asked. "Of America, Daddy. Obviously." "Why would aliens attack the president specifically?" "Because he has the nuclear codes. Everyone knows that." Clara tried not to laugh. Failed. After breakfast, Mason took them out to the barn to show Clara the restoration progress. He'd started cataloging every part, taking detailed photos, creating spreadsheets that tracked condition and replacement needs. "Henderson says it'll take at least 18 months, Mason said, running his hand along the Cobra's frame. "Maybe 2 years. Depends on parts availability." "That's a long time." "Good work takes time." He looked at her. "You can't rush fixing something that's been broken for 50 years. Clara felt the weight of that statement settle somewhere in her chest. They spent the rest of the day doing nothing particularly important, walking the property, playing cards, making sandwiches for lunch. It felt natural in a way Clara hadn't expected, comfortable, like something that could become a routine. When she left that evening, Chloe hugged her goodbye at the door. "Will you come to dinner tomorrow?" the little girl asked. "When Grandpa comes?" "Oh, I don't think—" "Please? Grandpa's kind of scary and you make Daddy less nervous." Mason looked embarrassed. "You don't have to—" "I'll come," Clara heard herself say. "What time?" 6.
And thank you. Mason said it quietly, just for her. Really? Sunday arrived too quickly. Clara spent the morning helping her mother with bills and medications, trying not to think about meeting Philip Reed. But by 4 o'clock, the anxiety had built to the point where her mother noticed. "What's wrong with you?" Patricia asked. "I'm having dinner with Mason's father." And that's terrifying because he's a billionaire and I'm nobody. And what if he thinks I'm after Mason's money or trying to take advantage or... Clara, stop. I can't stop. I'm spiraling. You're going to dinner. You're going to be yourself. If he doesn't like it, that's his problem. Her mother fixed her with a look. And if you are interested in Mason, which you clearly are, that's nobody's business but yours. I'm not. We're just friends. Keep telling yourself that. Clara changed clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a nice sweater. Not too formal, not trying too hard. She hoped. The drive out felt longer than usual. By the time she pulled up to the house, there was already another car in the driveway, a black Mercedes that probably cost more than Clara would make in 5 years. Great. Philip Reed was exactly what she expected. Tall, silver-haired, expensive suit even on a Sunday, the kind of presence that filled a room. He was standing in the living room when Clara walked in, mid-sentence about something related to the stock market. Absolute disaster, and if the board doesn't see that, then they're more incompetent than I thought. He stopped when he saw Clara. Who's this? Clara Bennett, Mason said. I invited her for dinner. Clara, this is my father, Philip. Philip's handshake was perfunctory, his eyes already assessing and dismissing her. Bennett, any relation to the Bennetts in Lake Forest? No, sir, South Side. Ah. That single syllable contained volumes. What do you do, Clara? I work for Reed Investments, Community Investment Division. Really? Philip glanced at Mason. Didn't realize you were still involved in hiring decisions. I'm not. Jennifer handles HR. I just made a recommendation. I see. Philip's tone suggested he saw quite a lot and none of it good. Well, shall we eat? Dinner was uncomfortable from the first minute. Philip dominated the conversation, talking about the company, about opportunities Mason was missing, about decisions the board was making without proper oversight. You should be there, Philip said, cutting into his steak. These are critical moments. The Chicago expansion alone requires someone with vision. The board has vision, Mason said. The board has quarterly earnings reports and no imagination. You built half those partnerships yourself. They need you. They're doing fine without me. They're treading water. There's a difference. Chloe picked at her food, looking small and uncomfortable. Clara wanted to say something but didn't know what. This wasn't her family, wasn't her business. How's the car coming? Philip asked, changing tactics. The rust bucket you paid too much for? It's not a rust bucket. It's a genuine Cobra, and I paid $120, which is about what it's worth in that condition. Should have bought something already restored. Would have been a better investment. I didn't buy it as an investment. Then what did you buy it for? Therapy? The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Mason's jaw tightened. Chloe stared at her plate. Clara found her voice before she could stop herself. He bought it because nobody else saw its value, because everyone else looked at it and saw garbage instead of history. Philip turned to her slowly. I'm sorry, I don't recall asking your opinion. You didn't, but you're sitting at your son's table insulting him for making choices you don't understand, so I'm offering it anyway. Mason looked shocked. Chloe's eyes went wide. Philip's expression went cold. I don't think you understand the dynamics of this family. I understand that your son is raising a wonderful kid in a safe, peaceful place while still running a successful company from a distance. I understand that he's restoring something beautiful that everyone else abandoned. And I understand that you're more interested in what he's not doing than what he is doing. Clara, Mason started. No, let her finish. Philip leaned back in his chair. Please, continue. Clara's heart was pounding, but she'd already committed. Mason is doing fine. Better than fine. He's making thoughtful decisions and being present for his daughter and helping people through his work. Maybe that doesn't look like what you wanted for him, but it's still worth something. And what exactly is your stake in this? Philip asked. Why do you care what I think of my son's choices? Because he's my friend, and because someone should tell you you're being an ass. The silence that followed felt infinite.
Chloe had stopped eating entirely, frozen with her fork halfway to her mouth. Then Philip laughed, a sharp, surprised sound. Well, at least she's honest. I should go, Clara said, standing abruptly. I'm sorry, that was out of line. Sit down, Philip said. It wasn't quite in order, but close. You've already torpedoed whatever polite pretense we were maintaining. Might as well see it through. Clara sat. Slowly, Philip studied her for a moment. You work in community investment? Yes, sir. Doing what, specifically? Processing applications, following up with applicants, helping Marcus Chen manage the program. Marcus is good people, smart, principled. Philip took a sip of wine. What do you think of the program? The question caught her off guard. It's good. It helps people who wouldn't get help otherwise. And is it profitable? I don't think it's supposed to be. Everything's supposed to be profitable eventually, otherwise it's charity, not investment. Maybe some things should be charity, Clara said. Philip's eyebrows rose. You sound like my son. That's probably a compliment. It wasn't meant as one, but Philip almost smiled. Mason, I'm beginning to see why you hired her. I told you I didn't go. Yes, Jennifer hired her, but you recommended her. Philip turned back to Clara. What made you defend him just now? Professional loyalty? Something else? Clara felt Mason's eyes on her. He stood up for himself when everyone was mocking him. He protected his daughter. He showed me kindness when I needed it. That's worth defending. Interesting? Philip set down his fork, seemed to make a decision. All right, I'll back off. Dad, I mean it. You're clearly doing something right if you've inspired this kind of loyalty. He gestured toward Clara. And she's got more spine than half my board members. Maybe you know what you're doing after all. The rest of dinner was easier. Philip still dominated the conversation, but the edge was gone. He asked Chloe about school, asked Clara about her background, asked Mason about the restoration timeline. When it was time for Philip to leave, he shook Clara's hand again at the door. His grip was firmer this time. You're good for him, Philip said quietly. Don't screw it up. We're not. Sure you're not. He smiled, and for the first time Clara saw the resemblance to Mason. Take care of my granddaughter, would you? She needs more people in her corner. Then he was gone, the Mercedes disappearing down the driveway. Mason closed the door, leaned against it, and let out a long breath. I'm so sorry, Clara said. I shouldn't have. Don't apologize. That was amazing. I called your father an ass. You did. And he loved it. Mason was grinning now. Nobody talks to him like that. Nobody. I was out of line. You were perfect. Chloe appeared from the hallway where she'd been hiding. Does this mean Grandpa's not mad at Daddy anymore? I think it means he's confused, Mason said, which is almost as good. After Chloe went to bed, Mason and Clara sat on the back porch with coffee, watching the stars come out. The night was cool, crickets singing, the kind of peaceful quiet that Clara had forgotten existed. My father was right about one thing, Mason said eventually. What's that? You're good for us. For Chloe. Maybe for me too. Clara's chest did something complicated. I'm just showing up. That's more than most people do. He was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you defend me in there? You could have stayed quiet. Would have been safer. Clara thought about it. Because you defended me first, when nobody else did. At that event. You didn't have to stand there and take their abuse. You could have left. But you stayed because walking away would have meant admitting they were right. They weren't right. I know, but they didn't know that, and you proved it by staying. Clara pulled her sweater tighter. Nobody's ever done that for me before. Stood their ground when it would have been easier to leave. Then you've been around the wrong people. Story of my life. They sat in silence for a while, comfortable this time. When Clara finally stood to leave, Mason walked her to her car. Come back next weekend? He asked. You sure? After I antagonized your father? Especially after that, Mason smiled. Same time? Same time. Clara drove home through the dark countryside, her mother's car rattling over uneven roads, and let herself admit what she'd been avoiding for weeks. She was falling for him. For both of them. For the quiet life they'd built. For the way Chloe laughed. for the careful way Mason fixed broken things. And that terrified her more than anything Philip Reed could have said, because things like this didn't happen to people like her. Good jobs, beautiful houses, kind men who looked at her like she mattered. That was for other people. People who had their lives together. People who deserved it. Clara was just surviving, barely. And survival didn't leave room for hope. But when she got home and found her mother asleep on the couch, peaceful for the first time in days, Clara let herself imagine it anyway. What it would feel like to stay, to belong, to build something instead of just getting through. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mason. "Thank you for tonight. Chloe says Mr. Turnip thinks you're brave." Clara smiled in the dark. "Tell Mr. Turnip I think he's wise. He says he knows. Apparently wisdom comes with the missing ear." She fell asleep that night still smiling, her phone on the pillow beside her, and dreamed of restored cars and open spaces and small hands holding hers. The video from the car event had faded from the news cycle by Monday, replaced by newer scandals and shinier drama. But occasionally Clara still got recognized, someone at the coffee shop near work, a woman on the bus who asked if she was that girl from the video. It felt surreal. She'd stood up to Richard Castellano for maybe 3 minutes, and somehow that had turned into a thing people knew about. Marcus thought it was hilarious. "You're famous for calling out a rich asshole. That's the best kind of famous." "I'm not famous. You've got a Wikipedia page." "I do not." "Okay, you don't. But you could. That's how close you are." The attention made Clara uncomfortable. She'd spent her whole life trying to be invisible, to not make waves, to slip through the world without anyone noticing. Being noticed felt dangerous. But the job was good. Really good. Every day she processed applications from people trying to build something better, trying to escape the same cycles of poverty and desperation she knew too well. And occasionally, not often, but sometimes, Marcus approved a grant and Clara got to call someone and tell them they'd been selected. Those calls made everything worth it. By the end of her 3rd week, Marcus pulled her into his office. "You're doing great," he said. "Better than great. I want to give you more responsibility." "Like what?" "Application reviews. Right now you just process and organize, but you've got good instincts. I want you to start evaluating them, making recommendations." "I'm not qualified." "You're more qualified than you think. You understand these people because you've been them. That's worth more than any business degree." Clara felt something crack open in her chest. "Okay, yeah, I can do that." "Good. We'll start small, maybe 5 applications a week. You review, make notes, tell me what you think." She threw herself into the work with an intensity that surprised even her. Stayed late reading applications, researching businesses, understanding markets. Marcus had to kick her out some nights, reminding her that burnout helped nobody. But Clara couldn't help it. For the first time in her life, she was doing something that mattered, something more than just surviving. And it felt incredible. The weeks blurred into a rhythm Clara hadn't expected. Work during the week, weekends at Mason's place, her life slowly splitting into 2 distinct pieces that didn't quite fit together yet. Monday through Friday, she was the professional, processing applications and making recommendations, earning Marcus's trust one evaluation at a time. Saturday and Sunday, she was someone else entirely. Someone who played board games with a 7-year-old and sat on porches watching the sunset over empty fields. Her mother noticed the change before Clara did. "You're different lately," Patricia said one evening in early October. They were watching some cooking show neither of them cared about, the volume low because her mother's headaches had gotten worse. "Different how?" "Lighter, like you're not carrying everything by yourself anymore." Clara didn't know what to say to that. It felt true and impossible at the same time. "It's the job," she said finally. "Having insurance? Stable income? It helps." "It's not just the job." Her mother's eyes were knowing. "It's him. Mom, you go out there every weekend. You come back smiling. Don't think I haven't noticed." Clara pulled the blanket higher over her mother's legs, avoiding eye contact. "We're friends, that's all." "Friends who look at each other the way you two do?" "What's that supposed to mean?" Patricia just smiled, tired but certain. "It means be careful, honey, but not so careful you miss something good." The next Saturday, Clara arrived at Mason's to find him in the barn with Henderson, the restoration specialist who'd driven up from California to evaluate the Cobra in person. Henderson was maybe 60, weathered and precise, moving around the car with the careful attention of a surgeon.
"This is incredible work," he was saying, running his fingers along a weld. "Original factory welds. Look at this. You can still see the identification marks. This is absolutely authentic." Mason looked pleased, but trying not to show it. "So it's salvageable?" "Salvageable? Son, this is one of the finest survivor Cobras I've seen in 20 years. The rust is superficial. The frame is solid. The engine's going to need a complete rebuild, but the block is good." Henderson straightened, pulled out a tablet. "I'm estimating 22 months for a proper restoration. Maybe 24 if we run into parts issues." "And cost?" Henderson named a figure that made Clara's stomach drop. It wasn't mansion money, but it was more than she'd make in 3 years. Mason didn't even blink. "When can you start?" "Soon as you sign the contract and we get it transported. I'll need full disassembly photos first, documentation of every part. We do this right, or we don't do it at all." "Agreed." They spent the next hour going over details while Clara wandered the property with Chloe, who was teaching her the names of different trees. "That's a sugar maple," Chloe said, pointing. "And that's a white oak. And that one's a cottonwood, but Daddy says they're messy, so he doesn't like them." "They are messy," Mason called from the barn. "Cotton everywhere." "But they're pretty." "Pretty and messy aren't mutually exclusive." Clara smiled, watching them bicker across the distance. This had become familiar, the easy back and forth, the way Chloe tested boundaries and Mason held them gently. It felt like watching something she'd never had herself, something she'd stopped believing existed outside of movies. After Henderson left, they made dinner together, pasta and salad and garlic bread that Chloe insisted on buttering herself. The kitchen was chaos, flour everywhere, Chloe getting more butter on the counter than the bread. But Mason didn't seem to mind. He just cleaned up behind her, patient and steady. "Can Clara stay for a movie?" Chloe asked through a mouthful of pasta. "Chew first, talk second." Chloe swallowed dramatically. "Can she?" Mason looked at Clara. "You have plans?" "Not really." "Then stay." They ended up on the couch watching some animated movie about talking animals that Clara lost the thread of after 20 minutes. Chloe fell asleep halfway through, curled against Clara's side, her breathing slow and even. Clara didn't move, afraid of waking her. Mason noticed. "You can shift her. She sleeps like the dead." "I'm okay." He studied her for a moment. "You're good with her. She's an easy kid to be good with. She wasn't always. After Sarah died..." He stopped, the name hanging in the air between them. He almost never talked about his wife. She was different, angry, scared. Wouldn't let anyone touch her for months. Clara looked down at the small girl sleeping against her shoulder. "What changed?" "Time, mostly. Therapy. Realizing the world wasn't going to hurt her again." Mason's voice went quiet. "And maybe me figuring out how to be present instead of just going through the motions." "You seem pretty present to me." "Now maybe. But the first year, I was a disaster, barely functional. If it wasn't for my assistant handling everything, the company would have collapsed. But you didn't let it." "I didn't have a choice." Chloe needed stability, needed to see that life could still work even when it felt broken. He rubbed his face. "Some days I'm still not sure I'm doing it right." "Nobody knows if they're doing it right. You just keep showing up and hope that's enough." Mason looked at her, something unreadable in his expression. "Is that what you do? Just keep showing up?" "It's all I know how to do. It's more than most people manage." When the movie ended, Mason carried Chloe upstairs to bed. Clara heard him reading to her softly, some story about dragons and princesses. The words were muffled through the floor, but the rhythm was soothing. He came back down 15 minutes later. "She wants you to say goodnight." Clara climbed the stairs to Chloe's room. The little girl was tucked into bed, surrounded by stuffed animals, Mr. Turnip positioned prominently on the pillow. "Hey, sweetie, I'm heading home. Will you come back next week?" "If your dad says it's okay." "He will. He likes you." Chloe said it with the absolute certainty of children who haven't learned to second-guess everything yet. "I like him too, and you." "I know, Mr. Turnip told me." "Mr. Turnip's very perceptive." Chloe giggled, then grew serious. "My mom used to read to me before bed, every night, even when she was tired." Clara's chest tightened. "That sounds nice."
Daddy tries, but he's not as good at the voices. He makes all the characters sound grumpy. She paused. Do you think my mom would like you? The question hit Clara like a physical thing. I don't know, sweetheart. I think she would. She liked people who were nice to Daddy when he was sad. Was he sad a lot? Before the accident, sometimes. He worked too much and Mom would get mad. But after... Chloe's voice wobbled. After she was gone, he was sad all the time. Clara didn't know what to say. She just smoothed Chloe's hair back, the way her own mother used to do for her. He's less sad now, Chloe whispered, since you started coming here. I'm glad. Me too. Downstairs, Mason was cleaning up the kitchen when Clara came back down. She helped without asking, drying dishes while he washed, falling into an easy rhythm. She asked about Sarah, Clara said. Mason's hands stilled in the soapy water. What did she say? Just that Sarah used to read to her, and that you were sad after she died. That's an understatement. He scrubbed at a plate harder than necessary. I was barely human for a year, just this hollow thing going through motions. But you kept going. Had to, for Chloe. Clara set down the dish towel. Can I ask what happened with the accident? Mason was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he started talking, his voice flat and careful, like he was reading from a script he'd memorized but didn't want to perform. Sarah had been driving home from a work event. Late night, tired, not paying attention. A semi ran a red light. She died instantly. Clean, they told him. Quick, like that was supposed to make it better. Chloe had been at home with a babysitter. She was 4. Old enough to understand Mommy wasn't coming back, but too young to process what that meant. She'd had nightmares for 2 years. Still had them sometimes, though less frequently now. The worst part is how random it was, Mason said. No reason, no lesson, just wrong place, wrong time, and everything changed. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back. No, but it means something anyway. Mason finally looked at her, his eyes red-rimmed. Why are you here, Clara? What do you mean? You could be doing anything with your weekends, seeing friends, dating, living your life. Instead, you're driving 90 minutes to hang out with a widower and his traumatized kid. Why? Clara thought about lying, about deflecting, but Chloe's question was still echoing in her head. Would Sarah have liked her? And somehow that made honesty feel necessary. Because when I'm here, I remember what it feels like to want something beyond just survival. Because your daughter makes me laugh, and you make me feel like maybe I'm worth more than I thought. Because this place, she gestured around the kitchen, at the house, at everything it represented. This place feels like something I've been looking for without knowing it existed. Mason set down the pan he'd been washing. Clara, I know it's complicated. I know you're still grieving. I know I'm probably just a distraction or a temporary thing or whatever. But I needed you to know that coming here isn't some obligation or charity case. I come here because I want to, because it matters to me. The silence that followed felt enormous. Mason just stared at her, water dripping from his hands onto the floor. Then he crossed the kitchen in 3 steps and kissed her. It wasn't smooth or practiced. It was desperate and uncertain and tasted like grief and hope tangled together. Clara's back hit the counter, Mason's wet hands on her face, and for one perfect moment everything else disappeared. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Mason looked terrified. I shouldn't have. Don't, Clara said. Don't apologize. I'm not ready for this. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. I'm not asking you to be ready. I'm just asking you to be honest. Mason pressed his forehead against hers, eyes closed. I think about you all week. I make up excuses to text you. Chloe asks about you constantly, and I don't tell her to stop because I like talking about you. I haven't felt this way about anyone since Sarah, and it scares the hell out of me. Me too. You're scared? Terrified. This doesn't happen to people like me. Good things don't just show up in my life. And when they do, they leave. What if I don't? Clara's eyes were burning. What if you do? They stood there in the kitchen, the question hanging between them, neither of them brave enough to promise something they couldn't guarantee. Finally, Mason stepped back, putting careful distance between them. You should probably go before I do something stupid like ask you to stay. Would that be stupid? I don't know, maybe. Probably. He ran his hands through his hair. I need to think. We both do. Clara nodded, collected her things, drove home in a daze. The kiss replayed in her head the entire way. The desperation in it, the fear, the possibility. By the time she got home, her mother was asleep and the apartment was quiet. She lay in bed that night, phone in her hand, waiting for a text that didn't come. The next week at work was torture. Clara couldn't focus, kept checking her phone, replaying the kiss and the conversation that followed. Mason didn't text, didn't call. By Wednesday, she'd convinced herself she'd ruined everything. Marcus noticed. "You okay? You seem distracted." "I'm fine." "You've been staring at the same application for 20 minutes. Clara forced herself to focus. "Sorry, just tired." "You sure that's all it is?" She wasn't sure of anything anymore, but she nodded anyway and tried to concentrate on work. Thursday afternoon, her phone finally buzzed. A text from Mason. "Can we talk?" Her heart stopped. "When? Tonight? I can drive into the city." Clara stared at the message, trying to decode it. He wanted to talk. That could mean anything. Could mean he'd realized the kiss was a mistake. Could mean he wanted more. Could mean anything in between. "Okay." "Where?" He named a coffee shop near her apartment. 7 o'clock. Clara spent the rest of the workday in agony, then went home and changed clothes 4 times before settling on jeans and a sweater. Her mother watched with knowing eyes, but didn't say anything. The coffee shop was busy when Clara arrived, loud with conversation and the hiss of espresso machines. Mason was already there, sitting at a corner table, looking as nervous as she felt. "Hey," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Hey." They ordered coffee neither of them wanted, both stalling. Finally, Mason broke the silence. "I've been thinking about what happened, what I said." "Me too. And I realized something. I've been using grief as an excuse to avoid living, telling myself I wasn't ready, that Chloe needed stability, that it was too soon. But the truth is," he stopped, gathered himself. "The truth is I'm just scared. Scared of losing someone again. Scared of screwing it up. Scared that if I let myself care about you the way I want to, something will take you away too." Clara's throat was tight. "I'm scared too. Of different things, maybe, but still scared. So what do we do?" "I don't know. What do you want to do?" Mason looked at her, really looked at her. "I want to try. I want to see where this goes. But I need you to understand, I'm a mess. I'm figuring out how to be a single parent while running a company from the middle of nowhere. I have a kid who has nightmares and anxiety and needs someone stable and present. I can't promise perfect. I can't even promise functional most days. I don't need perfect. I just need honest. Then here's honest. I like you. More than I've liked anyone in years. You make me remember what it feels like to want something beyond just getting through the day. And that terrifies me, but it also feels like maybe it's time to stop being terrified." Clara reached across the table, took his hand. "I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you want me to." "I don't want you to." "Then we try. We figure it out as we go." Mason squeezed her hand. "That's simple." "Probably not. But we start there and see what happens." They sat in the coffee shop until it closed, talking about everything and nothing, logistics and feelings and fears they'd never said out loud. It wasn't some grand romantic gesture. It was just 2 damaged people deciding to risk being damaged together. When Mason drove her home, he kissed her goodnight in the car, softer this time, less desperate, more like a promise. "See you Saturday?" he asked. "Wouldn't miss it." Clara watched him drive away, then went inside to find her mother still awake on the couch. "Well?" Patricia asked. "We're going to try, see what happens." Her mother smiled. "Good. You deserve something good." "Do I?" "Yes. Stop questioning it and just accept it." Clara sat beside her mother, pulled the blanket over both of them. "What if it doesn't work out?" "Then it doesn't, but at least you tried. That's more than most people do." The weeks that followed were strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Clara still came out every weekend, but things were different now. Mason would kiss her hello when she arrived, goodbye when she left. They held hands while walking the property, fell asleep on the couch together watching movies. Chloe adjusted faster than either of them expected. One night she climbed into bed between them during a movie and announced that this was better than before. "Better how?" Mason asked. Because now we're not sad all the time. We're like a family again. Mason and Clara exchanged a look over her head, both uncertain and hopeful. But it wasn't all smooth. Mason had bad days where he withdrew completely, lost in memories Clara couldn't access. Days where he'd apologize for not being present, for dragging her into his mess. Clara had her own struggles. Moments where the old fear crept back in, whispering that this was temporary, that she'd wake up and it would all be gone. She'd pull away without meaning to, defensive and scared. They fought sometimes. Not loud, explosive fights, but quiet ones that hurt worse. Arguments about Chloe's schedule, or Mason's father, or Clara's tendency to work too much. They were learning each other's sharp edges, figuring out where they fit and where they didn't. But they kept trying. In November, Mason invited Clara to Thanksgiving. His father would be there, he warned, some extended family. It would be chaotic and probably uncomfortable. Clara went anyway. Philip Reed greeted her with something approaching warmth, which Mason claimed was the closest his father got to approval. The extended family was polite but curious. Who was this woman Mason had brought? Where did she come from? What were her intentions? Clara handled it the way she handled everything, with quiet honesty and more backbone than people expected. By the end of the night, Philip pulled her aside in the kitchen. "You're good for him," he said. "Better than I expected." "Thank you." "That's a compliment. My son doesn't trust easily. The fact that he trusts you means something." Philip poured himself more wine. "Don't make me regret approving of you." "I'll do my best." That's all anyone can do. December arrived with the first real snow. Clara woke up one Saturday to a text from Mason with a photo attached. Chloe building a snowman. Mr. Turnip perched on top like a weird rabbit-shaped hat. She says you need to come help. The snowman needs a second opinion. Clara drove out through the snow, her mother's car struggling on the slick roads. When she arrived, Chloe was waiting with ammunition. The snowball fight that followed was chaos. Chloe and Clara against Mason, everyone soaked and freezing and laughing. They built 3 snowmen before finally retreating inside for hot chocolate. Clara sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, Chloe on one side and Mason on the other, and felt something settle in her chest. Not quite peace, not quite certainty, but something close. "This is nice," Chloe said sleepily. "Yeah," Mason agreed. "It really is." Clara didn't say anything, just held on to the moment, knowing it was fragile and temporary and possibly the best thing she'd ever had. That night after Chloe went to bed, Mason pulled Clara close on the couch. "I love you," he said quietly. "I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But I need you to know." Clara's breath caught. "Mason, you don't have to say it back. I just needed to say it, because it's true, and I'm tired of being scared." Clara kissed him, tasting hot chocolate and snow and possibility. "I love you too, even though it's terrifying. Especially because it's terrifying." They fell asleep on the couch that night, tangled together under a blanket, and for the first time in years, both of them felt something that looked almost like hope. January brought news that changed everything, though not in the way Clara expected. Her mother collapsed on a Tuesday morning. Clara was at work, reviewing an application from a woman who wanted to open a bakery when her phone rang. A neighbor she barely knew, voice shaking, saying Patricia had fallen and wouldn't wake up. The ambulance ride felt endless. Clara sat beside her mother's unconscious body, holding a hand that felt too fragile, watching monitors beep and flash. The paramedic kept saying things Clara couldn't process, medical terms that meant nothing and everything. At the hospital, doctors used words like advanced and metastasized and weeks, not months. Clara heard them from very far away, like she was underwater and they were speaking from the surface. "We can make her comfortable," one doctor said. A woman, maybe 40, with kind eyes that Clara wanted to hate. "But there's no treatment at this stage. I'm so sorry." Clara called Mason from the hospital chapel, a small room with uncomfortable chairs and a box of tissues that looked used. Her voice didn't sound like her own. "She's dying. They said weeks. I'm coming. You don't have to, I'm already in the car." He arrived 2 hours later with Chloe, who'd insisted on coming despite Mason's protests. They found Clara in the waiting room, staring at nothing. Chloe climbed into her lap without asking permission, just wrapped her small arms around Clara's neck and held on. "I'm sorry your mom is sick," Chloe whispered. It's really scary when moms are sick. Clara started crying then, ugly crying that shook her whole body. Mason sat beside them, one hand on Clara's back, solid and present, while she fell apart. They moved Patricia to hospice care 3 days later, a place that tried to look cheerful but just felt like a waiting room for death. Clara took a leave from work, spent every day in a chair beside her mother's bed, watching her fade in increments. Mason came every evening after putting Chloe to bed, bringing food Clara didn't eat and coffee she didn't drink. He didn't try to fix anything, just sat with her in the terrible silence. "You don't have to keep coming," Clara said one night. "This isn't your problem." "You're not a problem. Stop saying that." "I'm a mess. I'm falling apart. You should be protecting Chloe from this. Chloe knows people die. She's lived it. What I'm protecting her from is thinking you have to face things alone." Mason took her hand. "Let me be here. Please." Patricia had good days and bad days. On good days, she was lucid, cracking jokes about the terrible hospital food, asking about Mason and Chloe. On bad days, she didn't recognize Clara at all, lost in morphine dreams and distant memories. On one of the good days, she grabbed Clara's hand with surprising strength. "Don't waste time being scared," Patricia said. "I wasted too much time. Working jobs I hated, staying in a marriage that was killing me, putting off dreams because they felt impossible." Her eyes were fierce. "You got something good with that man. Don't sabotage it because you think you don't deserve it." "Mom, I mean it, Clara. Life's too short and too hard to turn away from the rare good things. You hear me?" "I hear you." "And stop visiting so much. You should be living, not watching me die." "I'm not leaving you alone." "I'm not alone. The nurses are here. That gossipy volunteer is here. You're wasting your life sitting in this chair." But Clara kept coming anyway, because leaving felt like giving up, and she wasn't ready to give up yet. Mason brought Chloe one Saturday afternoon. Patricia was having a good day, sitting up in bed, alert and present. "So you're the famous Chloe," Patricia said. Chloe nodded shyly, clutching Mr. Turnip. "Clara talks about you all the time, says you're smart and funny and have excellent taste in stuffed animals." "Mr. Turnip's very wise." "I can tell. He has the look of someone who's seen things." Patricia smiled, then looked at Mason. "And you? You taking care of my daughter?" "Trying to." "Good. She needs someone who'll stay. Her father didn't. Most men don't." Patricia's gaze was sharp despite the illness. "You planning to stick around?" "Yes, ma'am." "Even when it gets hard?" "Especially then." Patricia studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, I believe you." She turned to Clara. "Keep this one." After they left, Clara sat beside her mother's bed in the fading afternoon light. "You approve?" "Honey, my approval stopped mattering years ago. But yes, he's good people. So's his kid." "I'm scared, Mom." "Of what?" "That this is too good. That I'll mess it up. That he'll realize I'm not worth the trouble." "Clara Marie Bennett, you listen to me." Patricia's voice was weak but firm. "You have spent your entire life believing you're not enough, not smart enough, not successful enough, not worthy of good things. But that's bullshit. You're kind and brave and you show up even when it's hard. That's worth more than any amount of money or status." "I just..." No more self-doubt. You got a man who loves you and a little girl who adores you and a job where you help people. Stop waiting for it to be taken away and start accepting that maybe you built something real." Clara's eyes burned. "What if you're wrong?" "Then I'm wrong. But at least you'll have tried instead of running away from the first good thing that ever happened to you." Patricia died 2 weeks later, on a Wednesday morning while Clara was in the cafeteria getting coffee she didn't want. The nurse found her in the hallway, told her gently that her mother had passed peacefully, that she wasn't in pain anymore. Clara stood there holding a styrofoam cup of terrible coffee and felt nothing, just empty. Like someone had scooped out everything inside her and left a shell. She called Mason, didn't say anything, just breathed into the phone. "I'm on my way," he said. The funeral was small. A few of Patricia's old co-workers, some neighbors, Marcus and Jennifer from work. Mason stood beside Clara while they lowered the casket, Chloe on his other side holding Mr. Turnip like a talisman. Philip Reed showed up unexpectedly, paid his respects with surprising sincerity, then pressed an envelope into Clara's hand. "Your mother's medical bills. They're taken care of." Clara stared at the envelope. You didn't have to. I did. Nobody should start a new chapter drowning in debt from the old one. He squeezed her shoulder awkwardly. Besides, you make my son happy. That's worth something. After everyone left, Mason drove Clara back to the apartment she'd shared with her mother. The place felt haunted now, full of absence. I don't think I can stay here, Clara said, standing in the doorway. Then don't. Where am I supposed to go? Mason looked at her like the answer was obvious. Home. With us. Mason, I can't just... Why not? We have 8 bedrooms. Chloe wants you there. I want you there. He took her hands. Move in with us. Not because you have nowhere else to go, but because that's where you belong. Clara wanted to argue, to list all the reasons it was too fast, too much, too complicated. But she was so tired of being careful, of protecting herself from good things because she was afraid they'd disappear. Okay, she said. Yes, I'll come home. Moving into Mason's house was surreal. Clara had so few possessions that everything fit in her car, clothes, books, the handful of photos she'd salvaged from her mother's apartment. It seemed impossible that an entire life could condense into so little. Chloe helped her unpack, chattering excitedly about how they'd decorate the room together, how Clara could use the desk by the window, how Mr. Turnip approved of the arrangement. He says you make the house feel complete, Chloe announced seriously. Mr. Turnip said that? Well, I said it, but he agrees. That first night, Clara lay in bed in a room that was supposed to be hers now, in a house that was supposed to be home, and felt completely unmoored. Everything had changed so fast. Her mother was gone. Her apartment was gone. Her old life had dissolved, and this new one felt fragile and uncertain. She found Mason in the kitchen around midnight, making tea he probably wouldn't drink. Can't sleep? He asked. Everything feels wrong, like I'm wearing someone else's life. Give it time. Eventually it'll start feeling like yours. What if it doesn't? Mason set down his mug, pulled her close. Then we'll figure it out together. That's what we do now. We figure things out together. Clara buried her face in his shoulder and let herself believe him. The weeks that followed were an adjustment, learning the rhythms of the house, of Mason and Chloe's routines, figuring out where she fit in the ecosystem they'd built over 3 years of just the two of them. Some days it worked beautifully. Clara would cook dinner while Mason helped Chloe with homework, and it felt natural and right. Other days she felt like an intruder, watching a family that didn't quite have room for her yet. Chloe had nightmares sometimes, would call for Mason in the middle of the night. Clara would hear him padding down the hall, hear their soft voices through the walls. Those nights she felt most acutely that she wasn't the child's mother, wasn't Sarah, could never be what they'd lost. I'm not trying to replace her, Clara told Mason one morning after a particularly rough night. I know I can't. Nobody's asking you to. Mason looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. Sarah was Chloe's mother. She always will be, but that doesn't mean there's no room for you too. What if Chloe doesn't see it that way? Chloe adores you, you know that. Now, sure, but what about later? What about when she's older and starts resenting me for not being Sarah? Mason took her face in his hands. What if she doesn't? What if she grows up grateful that she got to have 2 people in her life who loved her? Why do you always assume the worst possible outcome? Because that's usually what happens. Not this time. I won't let it. Work became Clara's anchor. Marcus had held her position despite the extended leave, welcomed her back without question. The applications kept coming, people trying to build something from nothing, hoping for a chance. Clara threw herself into evaluations with renewed intensity. Each approval felt like a small victory, proof that good things could happen, that risk could pay off. One application stood out, a woman named Teresa Santos who wanted to open a community center in a neighborhood that desperately needed one. The numbers were rough, the business plan ambitious to the point of delusion. By every metric, it should have been an automatic rejection. But something in Teresa's story resonated. Single mother, 3 kids, working 2 jobs while taking night classes. Trying to build something that would outlast her, that would help people the way she wished someone had helped her. Clara wrote a recommendation for approval that was twice as long as usual, detailing every reason why this was exactly the kind of risk worth taking. Marcus read it, raised his eyebrows. You're getting soft. I'm getting smart. She'll make it work. How do you know? Because people who've been through hell know how to survive. And survival instinct translates to business sense better than any MBA. Marcus approved the grant. 2 months later, Teresa called to thank Clara personally, crying on the phone about how the money had changed everything. "You gave me a chance when nobody else would," Teresa said. "I won't forget that." Clara hung up and cried at her desk. And for the first time since her mother died, the tears felt like something other than grief. Spring arrived gradually. The snow melted, revealing the muddy property underneath. Mason started spending weekends in the barn, preparing for the Cobra's transport to California. Henderson called weekly with updates, photos of parts being fabricated, chassis work beginning. "Want to come see the progress?" Mason asked one Saturday morning. "Henderson says we can visit the shop." "Road trip?" "Road trip, just you and me. Chloe's spending the weekend with my father." They drove to California over 2 days, stopping at cheap motels and diners that served breakfast all day. It felt like playing hooky from real life, like being teenagers instead of adults with responsibilities. Henderson's shop was incredible, a massive space filled with cars in various states of restoration, each one receiving meticulous attention. The Cobra sat in the center bay, partially disassembled, its bones exposed. "This is extraordinary work," Henderson said, walking them around the car. "The frame is even better than I thought. We're going to bring this back better than factory original." Mason ran his hand along the exposed chassis, his expression reverent. Clara watched him, saw the joy in his face, and understood why the car mattered so much. "It's not about the money," she said later, as they drove back to the hotel. "What?" "The Cobra. It was never about what it's worth. It's about taking something everyone else gave up on and proving they were wrong." Mason glanced at her, something soft in his expression. "Yeah, that's exactly it."
Is that what you saw in me? Something broken that needed fixing? No, I saw someone who'd been told she was worthless so many times she believed it, and I wanted to prove everyone wrong, including you. Claire's throat tightened. Did you? I don't know, did I? She thought about the job, the house, the family she was building, about the way Chloe hugged her goodnight and Mason kissed her good morning, and Marcus trusted her judgment on applications that could change people's lives. Yeah, she said. I think you did. By summer, the house felt like home. Clara had claimed the desk by the window, had her own coffee mug in the cabinet, had memorized which floorboards creaked and which burner on the stove ran hot. She and Chloe had planted a vegetable garden that was struggling but alive. Mason had started teaching Clara about car restoration, patient with her ignorance, delighted when she understood something. They fought sometimes, about stupid things usually, dishes left in the sink, Chloe's bedtime, how much time Mason spent working. But they'd learned to fight fair, to say sorry when they meant it, to not let anger fester. One evening in July, Philip came for dinner unannounced. He did that sometimes now, showing up with expensive wine and unsolicited advice, staying for hours because he was lonely, even if he'd never admit it. The board wants you back, Philip said over dessert. Full time, in the city. Mason's jaw tightened. No. At least consider it. I said no. You're wasting your potential hiding out here. I'm not hiding. I'm choosing. There's a difference. Mason set down his fork. I'm running a company that does good work while raising my daughter in a place where she feels safe. That's not wasting anything. Philip looked like he wanted to argue, but then Chloe spoke up. Grandpa, do you know Clara helped 73 people start businesses this year? Philip blinked. What? 73. I counted. She has a list on the refrigerator. Chloe said it with absolute pride. That's more than the whole board probably helped. Philip looked at Clara, who was trying not to laugh. Is that true? 76, actually. 3 got approved last week. Doing what? Clara listed some of them. The bakery in Englewood, the auto shop on the south side, Teresa's community center. Real businesses helping real people, most of which wouldn't exist without the grants program. Philip listened, expression unreadable. When she finished, he raised his wine glass. To doing good work in unexpected ways. Mason looked shocked. Clara just smiled and clinked her glass against Philip's. After dinner, Philip pulled Clara aside on the porch. You're good for him, he said. Better than I expected. You've said that before. I'm saying it again because it's still true. He's happier than I've seen him in years. Chloe's thriving. The company's doing well. Philip paused. And you're doing meaningful work. That matters. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep doing it.
He hesitated. And for what it's worth, Patricia would be proud of you. Claire's eyes burned. You barely knew her. I knew enough. She was a fighter. Raised you to be one too. Philip squeezed her shoulder. That's worth something. August brought news that the Cobra restoration was nearly complete. Henderson sent photos that made Mason nearly drop his phone. Gleaming blue paint, perfect chrome, interior restored to factory specifications. It's beautiful, Clara said, looking over his shoulder. It's perfect. When does it come home? Next month, September 15th. Mason had been planning a private unveiling, just family, but word got out somehow, probably through Philip, who'd never met a networking opportunity he didn't exploit. By the time September arrived, there were requests from collectors, automotive journalists, even the museum that had hosted the original disaster of an event. We don't have to do anything public, Clara said. Tell them all no. But Mason surprised her. Actually, I want to. One event, properly done. Show people what the car became. Are you sure? I'm sure, but only if you're there with me. The event was held at the house, on the property. Mason hired professional planners, proper photographers, created something elegant and understated. Collectors came from across the country. Automotive historians documented everything. Press coverage was extensive but respectful. The Cobra sat in the barn under a cover, waiting. When Mason finally pulled the cover away, the crowd gasped. The transformation was complete. From rusted wreck to stunning machine, every detail perfect. The blue paint gleamed under carefully positioned lights. The chrome shone. It looked like it had just rolled off the assembly line in 1965. This is what patience looks like, Mason told the assembled crowd. This is what happens when you see value instead of damage, when you're willing to do the work instead of walking away. He wasn't just talking about the car. Everyone there knew it. Clara stood beside him, Chloe on her other side, and felt something settle in her chest. They'd built this. Not just the car's restoration, but everything around it. The life, the family, the home. Later, after everyone left and the property was quiet again, the three of them sat on the hood of the Cobra under the stars. Can we keep it? Chloe asked. Not sell it? That's the plan, Mason said. Some things aren't for sale. Like what? Like family, like home, like the things that matter more than money. Chloe considered this. Is Clara family now? Mason looked at Clara, asking permission with his eyes. Yeah, sweetie, Clara said. I think I am. Good. Mr. Turnip approves. They sat there until Chloe fell asleep between them, the Cobra gleaming in the moonlight, proof that broken things could be made whole again if you were willing to do the work. In October, Marcus called Clara into his office with news. We're expanding the community investment program. More funding, bigger reach. We need a director. He grinned. Congratulations. Wait, what? You're being promoted, Director of Community Investment. Comes with a raise, an office, actual decision-making authority. You've earned it. Clara sat down hard. I don't have a degree. I don't have experience directing anything. You have something better. You understand the people we're trying to help because you've been them. And you've proven over the last year that you can evaluate risk better than anyone else in this division. Marcus slid a folder across his desk. Take the job, Clara. Stop talking yourself out of good things. She took the job. The promotion meant longer hours sometimes, more responsibility, occasional travel. But it also meant approving grants herself, building programs she believed in, making real change instead of just processing paperwork. Mason supported it without question, adjusted his schedule to pick up Chloe from school on days Clara worked late, never made her feel guilty for the work she loved. You're allowed to have ambition, he told her when she worried she was being selfish. You're allowed to build something that matters to you. Even if it means less time here, we'll figure it out. That's what families do. By November, Clara had been living with Mason and Chloe for 9 months. It felt simultaneously like forever and no time at all. She'd learned that Mason hummed while cooking, that Chloe hated green beans but would eat them if Clara made them, that the house settled differently in winter than summer. She'd memorized the way Mason looked first thing in the morning, the sound of Chloe's laugh when she was really delighted, the exact position of her coffee mug in the cabinet. Small things, normal things, the kind of things that added up to a life. One evening in late November, Mason came home from the barn with grease on his hands and a nervous expression. Can we talk? Clara's stomach dropped. Those 4 words never meant anything good. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. He wiped his hands on a rag, sat beside her on the couch. I've been thinking about the future. Our future. Okay. And I realized something. I don't want you here because you have nowhere else to go. I don't want this to be temporary or convenient or safe. He pulled out a small box, opened it. I want this to be permanent, if you do. The ring was simple, elegant, exactly what Clara would have chosen if she'd ever let herself imagine choosing one. Mason, I love you. Chloe loves you. This house feels empty when you're gone and complete when you're here. I know it's only been a year. I know we're still figuring things out. But I also know I want to spend the rest of my life figuring things out with you. Clara's eyes were burning. This is insane. Probably. We barely know each other. I know you take your coffee black and you cry at animated movies, and you work too hard because you're afraid of being useless. I know you're brave and stubborn, and you see value in people everyone else overlooks. I know I want to wake up next to you for the next 50 years. He took her hand. That feels like knowing enough. What if I mess it up? Then we'll fix it, together. That's kind of our thing now. Mason smiled. Marry me, Clara. Let's make this official. Clara looked at the ring, at Mason, at the life they'd built from wreckage and rust, and 2 people who'd thought they were too broken to be fixed. Yes, she said. Okay. Yes. They got married in April, small ceremony on the property with just family and close friends. Chloe was the flower girl, carrying Mr. Turnip down the aisle because she insisted he deserved to participate. Philip officiated with surprising tenderness. Marcus and Jennifer came, along with Teresa Santos and several other people whose applications Clara had approved, whose lives had changed because someone had taken a chance on them. It wasn't fancy. The decorations were simple. Clara's dress was off the rack, but it was perfect anyway, because it was real and honest and exactly what they both wanted. When Mason kissed her, Chloe cheered so loudly it startled the birds from nearby trees. The reception was held in the barn. The restored cobra displayed prominently as a reminder of what patience and work could build. People danced and ate and celebrated, and Clara felt more seen and valued than she'd ever felt in her life. Late in the evening, she found herself standing beside the cobra with Philip. You did good, he said. Both of you. We got lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it. You both saw value where others saw junk. In the car, in each other, in yourselves. Philip raised his glass. That's not luck. That's wisdom. I don't feel very wise. Nobody does. We're all just making our best guesses and hoping they work out. He smiled. But sometimes they do. And when they do, it's worth celebrating. A year later, Clara stood in the barn holding a pregnancy test with 2 pink lines, terrified and thrilled in equal measure. When she told Mason, he picked her up and spun her around like they were in a movie, then immediately panicked about whether spinning was bad for pregnant women. Chloe was ecstatic. I'm going to be a big sister. Mr. Turnip's going to be a big brother too. Mr. Turnip is a stuffed animal, Mason pointed out. He has feelings, Daddy. Don't be rude. The pregnancy was rough. Morning sickness that lasted all day, fatigue that made working difficult, anxiety about everything that could go wrong. But Mason was there through all of it, patient and steady, reminding Clara that she was strong enough for this. In February, they had a daughter, Charlotte Rose Reed, 7 pounds 3 ounces, with her father's eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. Chloe insisted on holding her in the hospital, cradling her baby sister with such careful tenderness that Clara started crying all over again. She's perfect, Chloe whispered. We're going to take such good care of her. We are, Clara agreed. Bringing Charlotte home felt like completing something Clara hadn't realized was unfinished. The house that had felt too big now felt exactly right, filled with noise and chaos, and the particular joy of new life. Mason was a nervous wreck for the first month, checking Charlotte's breathing every hour, convinced something would go wrong. Clara had to remind him that babies were more resilient than they looked, that they'd figure it out together. And they did. Slowly, messily, with plenty of mistakes and sleepless nights and moments of pure terror. But they figured it out. By summer, they'd found a rhythm. Clara went back to work part-time, Marcus understanding and flexible. Mason adjusted his schedule to be primary caregiver, taking calls from the barn while Charlotte napped nearby. Chloe helped more than Clara expected, patient with her crying baby sister, protective and loving in ways that made Clara's chest ache with pride. One evening in August, Clara found Mason in Charlotte's room, holding their sleeping daughter against his chest.
"You okay?" she asked softly. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?"
"About how different things could have been. If you hadn't stood up at that event. If I'd sold the car instead of restoring it. If we'd both been too scared to try." Clara leaned against the doorframe. "But we did try." "We did, and look what we built." Mason looked down at Charlotte, then back at Clara. "This is everything I didn't know I needed." "Me too." They stood there in the dim nursery, watching their daughter sleep, and Clara thought about her mother's words from that hospice bed. "Don't waste time being scared. Life's too short to turn away from the rare good things." She'd stopped being scared. Or rather, she'd learned to be scared and do it anyway. To risk being hurt because the alternative was never feeling anything at all. The Cobra still sat in the barn, gleaming and perfect. A reminder that value existed underneath damage if you were willing to look for it. Collectors had offered obscene amounts of money over the years. Mason turned down every offer. "It's not for sale," he'd say. "Some things matter more than what they're worth." On their third wedding anniversary, Clara came home from work to find Mason and both girls in the driveway, Chloe practically vibrating with excitement. "What's going on?" "We have a surprise," Chloe announced. "Come to the barn." Inside, beside the Cobra, sat another car. This one was rough, covered in rust, and clearly abandoned for years. But Clara recognized the lines underneath. A 1969 Mustang Boss 429. "I thought we could restore this one together," Mason said. "Take our time. Figure it out as we go." Clara walked around the car, seeing past the rust to the potential underneath. "This is going to take years. That's the point. We've got years. It's going to be expensive. We'll figure it out. It might not work. We might get halfway through and realize it's too damaged to save." Mason pulled her close, Charlotte asleep in the carrier strapped to his chest, Chloe dancing around the cars making plans. "Or we might restore something beautiful. Only one way to find out." Clara looked at her family, at the cars, at the life they'd built from nothing and rust, and two people brave enough to believe broken things could be made whole. "Okay," she said. "Let's do it." And they did. Over the next 5 years, they restored the Mustang piece by piece. Mason teaching Chloe and Clara about engines and frames, all of them learning together, making mistakes and fixing them. The work was slow and sometimes frustrating, but it was theirs. When they finally finished, the Mustang sat beside the Cobra in the barn, two pieces of automotive history brought back from ruin. But the real restoration had happened years earlier. Two broken people who'd found each other in the worst moment and decided to build something beautiful anyway. Who'd learned that value wasn't determined by surface appearance, that worth existed in unexpected places, that the best things in life often came disguised as disasters waiting to happen. Mason had bought a rusted car for $120 because he saw what it could become. And in doing so, he'd taught himself, and Clara, the transformation was always possible if you were willing to do the work. The cars sat in the barn, gleaming proof that time and patience could heal almost anything. But the real proof was in the house, in Chloe's laughter, Charlotte's first steps, Clara's smile when she came home from approving another grant, Mason's contentment with a life that looked nothing like what his father had planned, but everything like what he needed. They'd taken broken pieces and built something whole. Not perfect, never perfect, but real and lasting and worth every moment of fear and risk it took to get there. And that, Clara thought, watching her family through the barn window as the sun set over the property, was worth more than any amount of money or success or polish could ever be. Sometimes the most valuable things came covered in rust. You just had to be brave enough to see past it.